All right, ladies and gentlemen, so now we are on step 1 of our final draft. And the first thing I want you to do is you're going to take your paper and fold it hamburger so that you have 2 sides to your paper, because we're actually going to do this drawing twice. You are going to do a front view and you are going to do a side view. So since we are making these into sculptures, you really need to think about this thing from different directions. So if I'm looking at a pose, if this is my side view, it looks very different than my front view. And my side view gives me some information, but my front view gives me some other information. So you're going to need information from both for your sculpture, so that's why we're going to do both. So what you want to start with whichever one is easier. For my particular pose, I think a side view is going to be easier because I'm doing my whole, and you can even put at the bottom your message. Dive into something new. So I'm going to start with my side view. Once again, I've got my mannequin out and I'm looking at it. Or at this point, you might want to get someone to pose for you so that you really get a feel for what that pose can be physically. So I've got this arm over here. The other arm is back behind it. So you're going to do your gesture drawing. And you're going to do, so I've got, there we go. There's one leg, and then maybe the other one's kicking out more. All right, now I kind of tilted mine. It's not going straight up and down. If yours is more standing, you might want yours to stand up a little bit more. And then you got to do your front. We're going to pause on the front view for a minute. First, we're going to do the first step to the side view to make sure we're about the right size for the paper. So step 1, and let me grab a Post-it so I can write on that so I'm not writing on my final draft. So now we are doing, so first you do a gesture, whichever one is easier. Then you measure height to make sure it will fit on your paper. So now is when you need to pull back out your measurements from a couple of classes ago. I gotta find mine in my sketchbook. There it is. So now you need to pull out this paper right here because these are the measurements you're going to make your sculpture match. So the first thing you're going to do is measure height. Now, for me, because my pose is a little different, I still want to measure height, and I want to make sure that 7 heads fit from my head to the bottom of my foot. Now, this leg is bent a little, so if I get to 7 heads and the foot doesn't hit on that height, that's fine. Because really what I want to make sure is that there's enough room if the body's too short or if the legs are too short that it will fit on the paper. So I am 7 heads tall. So, now, the ways of measuring. Let's go back to our paper. Let's go back to our Post-it. The ways of measuring, there are 3. Are your fingers, a pinch, and a head ruler. So these are the 3 ways of measuring. So the first way is is using your fingers. So that means you take your fingers, you hold them nice and still, and you measure. And you go 1, 2, see how I'm moving this hand so that I'm marking where it ends. 3, 4, 5. So 7 heads does not fit on my paper. I'm going to come back to that after I show you the other 2. Now a pinch is you take your pencil and you pinch your pencil. If you're someone who finds your fingers are moving a little bit each time, that's bad for measuring. So you can pinch the pencil, which is much easier to hold a pinch, and then you can do the same thing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5. Okay, and the last thing that you can do is you can take a piece of scrap paper. I'm just using a Post-it, but you can use any piece of scrap paper. And you can make yourself a head ruler. You can even very lightly mark on your paper where those heads are if you keep forgetting to move your hand. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of 6 is probably how much I am. Now, the problem is that I am actually 7 heads tall, so that means not all of my drawing is going to fit on my paper. So you have several options. Now, one, if I didn't have my arms coming this way, I could just move my whole body over one head and the whole thing would fit. But because my arms are also taking up space, I'm going to have to make my drawing just a little bit smaller. So the confines of this paper are kind of the confines of your sculpture. Your sculpture cannot be bigger than this paper is in any direction. So what I'm going to do is make my head just a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to make a new head ruler. So there's 1, 2. So I'm going to erase my old head measurements. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now 7 will fit on the page. I can put a little very light ground line there. Now that light ground line tells me, Miss Chester, that you have measured your height. So if I do not see this light ground line, I know you haven't measured your height and I'm not going to come check your paper. So that is the first part. You get your height. Now that I have a head ruler and I know how big my side view needs to be, now the last part to this step, before I can sign off, is to do the same thing except do your front view. So for my front view, I'm going to move my head down a little bit more on the paper, but I'm going to make sure it's the same size. So I'm going to use that head ruler, or if I used a pinch, I can use that pinch, or any way so that my head is the same size on both sides. Now, from a front view, your head's a little bit more round than it is on a side view, so I'm going to make it a little bit more round. And then, once again, I'm going to pull out either that gesture or get someone to pose for me, and I'm going to look at the pose. And draw the gesture drawing. Now, because this leg is bent down, I'm not going to see all of it. And because this is bent back, I'm not going to see all of it. So this is where it kind of gets a little bit tricky. This leg, however, is bent up. So I'm going to see part of it, but I'm not going to see the foot. I'm just going to see the heel. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take that head ruler and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And because I was good, both views fit on the paper. So that is done step 1. And so you need to show me this, and I will sign off on your learning guide that you are done step 1 for both views.